Dive into the pulse of Bills football with Turf to Tape, where veteran sideline reporters Sal Capaccio and film room guru Erik Turner deliver a one-of-a-kind podcast experience, combining Sal's unparalleled access to players and coaches with Erik's razor-sharp film breakdowns. The show bridges the gap between casual fans and hardcore enthusiasts. This is Turf to Tape.
This is Turf to Tape, brought to you by Thin Man Brewery. I'm one of your hosts, Erik Turner, joined by the man that does it all, the man that lives at the intersection of access and insight, Sal Capaccio. Sal, good morning, brother.
Good morning. I think I'm living at the intersection of what would be maybe Batavia, Pembroke, somewhere like that. That lasted this whole week, right? I mean, making the trip back and forth to camp, always an interesting time of year.
Man, and you guys are crushing it with coverage yourself, each and every day, boots on the ground for this show and many shows. And I'll say you guys are doing a great job, especially you and Matt with the recaps each and every day. You've done a great job of that. You've had some awesome on-site podcasts as well, man. Talk about that. How's that been going this year?
Yeah, it's been going great. We live in this world, in this society now where I think all of these kinds of shows, we can be so much more mobile, right? Like what we do now. And you've realized that in Cover One, you guys have done a lot of shows that are mobile, and that since we're out at camp, doesn't prevent us from doing that. We can go to a lot of different places. We were over at Barbell East on Thursday night, had a jam-packed crowd. It's our third straight year of doing it. It just gets bigger and better. And what's really cool when we do these shows is when fans come up and ask us questions, we give them a mic and they talk, right? Reminds me of growing up in the 80s and 90s, and you'd have like the Jim Kelly show and like Vic Carucci would be hosting. You'd be at some like hotel or bar somewhere, and they go to the audience with a camera, right? It's really kind of the same kind of thing, right? That's what we do, and we love providing that information and access to people. And then we have something like this, which is so much more in depth for people, on top of just the regular reporting storylines. How's this guy look? What they're doing? We dive more into some of the nitty gritty for those kinds of fans. So I think there's just a space for everybody.
And honestly, just watching your show at Barbell, it was really inspiration for today. I said, you know what, let's just go live. I pulled an audible last second. I was like, let's go live that I know it's early. It's 8 a.m. Eastern right now. But if any fans in the chat want to send us a question or have any topics you want us to cover, make sure to slam us there and hit that comment button and let us know what questions you have. But man, camp's been, this is like the first phase almost being over, right? The first few practices of camp are in the books. And so we wanted to give some takeaways and hear your takeaways from camp. Yeah. So, but before we get to what has happened at camp, why don't you fill in the listeners and viewers on the type of things that you can cover, especially now that like Hard Knocks is there? What are some of the things you can cover, but more importantly, what can't you cover when you're out at practice or out at camp?
Yeah, well, so, for several years now, and this kind of goes back a little bit a while, the Bills, they've gone the way of a lot of teams in the league. The Bills are not, they're not unique in this regard, which is what your kind of reporting obligations are. I should say that the restrictions are, right? And at training camp, it used to be where we really were kind of very strict on, you can't say who's working with the first team, can't say who's working with the second team. This is proprietary information. Teams don't want out there because of, their opponents and, people knowing things they're doing. But I think over the years, the Bills and other teams have realized, okay, well, fans are in the stands and fans are going and putting it out there.
Out there reporting.
Right. So whether it's Sal Capaccio on the sidelines doing his job or somebody in the stands, someone's going, oh, that guy's working with the first unit. So what they've done is they've said, hey, when fans are there, we can say who's working with the first unit. We can say who's working with the second unit. Well, we can never get into a strategy though, Erik, like what kind of motion they're running, what kind of personnel they're bringing in more often than not. Those are things that, we're not allowed to go on the air and say, which is why I always say on WGR when I get brought on, well, I can't really talk about that specifically, but let me tell you about a little bit more. So there are some restrictions. I think it's kind of navigating that. And listen, the Bills are great, willing partners for that. If you have a question, you ask PR and say, hey, is that okay if can I say that? Sure, you could do that. For example, let's just say there's a play that like yesterday's a really good example. On Friday, there was a really nice throw to Dalton Kincaid where he makes the play going over down kind of a left sideline fade, catches it over the shoulder. Cam Lewis is right on top of him. He gets up, he shakes his head like, oh, I can describe all of that. I can't really describe exactly what formation they were in, what the motion was on the play, and give you the play-by-play details of that play. But Dalton Kincaid down the left sideline on fade is okay. And
Right.
if that makes sense. And that kind of allows you to still be descriptive, but not be, overly descriptive of what you're trying to, not trying to get away from. Now, once the team comes back from training camp, then they're in Buffalo. Now, the rules stay the same for a little while, but once the regular season hits, then it's a lot different. Then it's, hey, we only get to watch certain parts of practice. I can't even tell you what they're working on because I'm literally watching guys throw footballs and catching them, going back into the media room and then get ready to come back out for after practice. So this is the only time period we can even see a lot of this stuff.
Oh, that's a great point. And that's a really great point. And it's funny because yes, for years, even when I'd go out to camp and me, I like to cover every little nuts and bolts. It's something that the access that you have is different than what I have. So now I could report those type of things being up in the stands and all that, but you guys couldn't. So you guys were you had like an arm behind, tied behind your back.
Yeah.
Some things. And I know they kind of lightened up in that regard in some ways, but for sites like Cover One, we were allowed to, it was a free for all essentially. But I do remember early on, this was probably like 2017 when I was working for The Athletic and I was going out to camp and I was writing those in-depth breakdowns for camp. I know the organization didn't like that. And that's when that transition started to happen and you saw them clamp down a little more. But it's not just because of what you were doing or what I was doing. It's more so they started becoming successful. And we talked about that offline and how that success and that competitive edge actually does matter. We know it matters with Sean McDermott and many in this organization. And so they don't want too much information getting out there, whether it's from you or from me, because of the competitive disadvantage or advantage that it could give the Bills or other teams, their opponents.
And you still can't, you can't go even in the stands. You can't be recording video when they're running plays, right? I mean, like you'll get booted out of there. Like that's just something you can't do. And that's the rule. And now things have changed because of Hard Knocks there as well, right? Which is, okay, there is a lot of inside access and they have to be very careful about, because I've watched Hard Knocks in the past where there'll be a game later in the season. And I've really heard a player say, well, during Hard Knocks, I heard them call that audible.
Yeah.
And I mean, these are little things they pick up on and you have to be very careful about. So
no doubt.
Hard Knocks it's really interesting to watch them. There's lots of cameras there, lots of people. They're wearing the blue shirts that say Hard Knocks and they're very identifiable. But I also tell you, they're not intrusive. It's really cool. Like they're just kind of a part of the media. And I think it's been really kind of cool to watch where the boom mics are, who they're following around a little bit and all that kind of stuff. And I'm really interested to see the finished product on
same.
First one is Tuesday, August 5th is the first Hard Knocks show. So we're going to see that.
Yeah, it's going to be cool. So, I mean, it's good to hear that they're not being intrusive and they're kind of just like a fly on the wall type of thing and kind of just in the background, not in the forefront. But so what were your overall thoughts from the first few days of camp? Does anything overarching stand out for this camp versus maybe other camps for the Bills?
I think that the same thing has happened the last few years, which I noticed they hit the ground running at training camp, right? I think that sometimes there's been camps I've covered in the past, maybe a little less Sean McDermott, but other coaches. But even I think early on with Sean, like there's a little bit more of everybody's a little bit newer. There's a little bit more of an install going on. Yeah, they're installing, but Erik, I mean, everybody's back on the offense except for basically two guys that are changed out at wide receiver, right? Let's think about the only significant changes they had on the entire offense this year in the offseason. Out are Amari Cooper and Mac Hollins. In are Elijah Moore and Joshua Palmer, and of course a draft pick in Caden Prather. And then they lost Quentin Morris, but they drafted Jackson Hawes. That's it, right? So you can really, I mean, when I say hit the ground running, like everything is done. It's not just that you installed it during OTAs and minicamp. It's that everybody knows what we've done the last several years here. Even Joe Brady's been on this staff for a few years, even though he wasn't the offensive coordinator, maybe full-time a couple of years ago. So I think the biggest thing for me is I just see as soon as they go to training camp, day number one, I mean, it's right away. It feels like a regular season practice to me, if that makes sense.
Totally. And, having these guys together for so many years and from the scheme, from the coaching to the personnel, you can do different things at a quicker pace. And, it's hard and difficult for these younger guys to really crack the lineup and pray there. And I know that's been, the talk this week. It is difficult, but when he gets in there, he's got to make plays. He's got to make an impact and learn. But you can not only hit the ground running, but stack things a little quicker because you have guys that know the system and know, what they're seeing once they get up to the line of scrimmage. So you talked about just the slight makeover at the wide receiver group. So we've heard a lot about Palmer and Elijah Moore and Coleman to a certain extent. Aside from them, what does Curtis Samuel and Khalil Shakir look like in camp? Because it seems like they've kind of flown under the radar because of that transition and adding guys like Palmer and more. So what are those guys looking like in camp so far?
So Khalil Shakir is the ultimate steady as you go guy, right? I mean, you know what you're going to get from him. You know, he's not this like huge, wow, big play, athletic, over the top guy. That's not what you're going to get from Khalil Shakir. I think one of the best parts about Khalil Shakir is Khalil Shakir knows who Khalil Shakir is.
Yeah.
If that makes sense, right? Which is he's not trying to do too much. He knows exactly what his role is. He knows exactly how he's supposed to fit into this offense. And that's what he does every single practice. I mean, you look up, I don't mean I'm not charting this. That's another thing you really can't do. I don't know. There's one of those spaces, but I'm not the guy that charts stats at camp anyway. It's just not me. But if I did, I wouldn't doubt Erik if at the end of every camp, I went back and looked and goes, oh, Khalil had 7 catches and 11 on 11. I didn't realize that. Mm-hmm. He's just there all the time. He's just a guy that Josh Allen looks to. He makes the catch. And what I really like about Khalil, this wide receiver group, which you can get into more of these guys too, is I am seeing, and I know the Bills have concentrated on this in the past, and it hasn't come to fruition. I'm seeing a really nice ability to run after the catch. And Khalil's really one of those guys that they've really wanted to see run after the catch more the last few years. I mean, he is a punt returner. We've seen that. We know with the ball in his hands, he can be good. He can be dynamic with the ball in his hands. Running after the catch, I think it's kind of been noticeable for me for Khalil Shakir this camp a little bit more, but that might be a product of the offense too. And some of the things they're doing, they're working on the mid-range game a lot more. I wrote about that, a couple of days ago, and that's where Curtis Samuel comes in. I thought Curtis Samuel was the best receiver on the field, best player on the field, maybe who most notable, at least for me, maybe not best, most notable on offense a couple of days ago. So I guess it would have been day number 2 on Thursday.
Yeah.
That's when they were really working the intermediate game, and Curtis Samuel just was popping. He was showing up. And I think the way I look at Curtis Samuel, Erik, is they signed this guy last year to have this really versatile role. He can play outside, he can play inside, he can run by you. He's way faster than people give him credit for and think because it's not his normal game, right? He also, let's remember, he went to college at Ohio State as a running back. This guy played running back. I think the Bills' plan for him was to use him as a matchup all around the field. But because of that toe injury, really midway through August last year, it never materialized the way they wanted. I kind of take last year and throw it out. And it's almost like a do-over for Curtis Samuel this year. Mm-hmm. I don't think they're trying to evolve his role. I just think they want his role to be exactly what they thought it would be last year.
That is exciting to hear. When you mentioned in your article and talking after day 2 about how the Bills were attacking the intermediate area, I'm like, man, if you guys rewind to the first episode of Turf to Tape, we talked about it, how Moore and Palmer and others could help Josh Allen in that 10 to 19 yard range, that intermediate range, because that is one area that actually Josh Allen could be better at. When you looked at some of the stats from last year, I talked about it in the last show. He was 27th in completion percentage at 48.5% in the 10 to 19 yard range, and 30th in wide receiver target percentage at 57.4%. So he wasn't looking to receivers in that 10 to 19 yard range or that intermediate range. And so to hear you talk about that really, obviously, kudos back to our first show, but it's the area that the Bills can attack, that the middle of the field, especially. I see a lot of your cut-ups of Keon Coleman on those in-breaking routes and the receivers getting to the middle field in that intermediate range. And it makes me excited because we're going to see the Bills offense is going to see a lot more single high coverages, whether it's cover 1 or cover 3. And that sweet spot against those coverages is right in the middle of the field in that 10 to 19 yard range. So seeing and hearing that the wide receivers are getting targeted in that area. And then, like you said, guys like Shakir, who we know is good with run after the catch stuff, getting the ball in those areas, but also allowing them to do something after the catch is great to hear from camp the first 3 days.
And I think Keon Coleman, that's a strength of his, right? We just, we have to see more of it. You got to see him make that catch and run. We've seen it in camp now. The video you're referring to, there was one, and, just so people know, to go back to our earlier conversation, people always say, oh, there's a great play by this guy. Well, where's the video? We can't record when they're going offense against defense, right? We can't do that. What we can do is record, Josh Allen throwing to receivers early on, just kind of against air. And there was a play right here. Now you watch Keon Coleman catch this. Now watch him put his right foot in the ground and get upfield when he catches this ball. This is great. And this is what you teach a young guy, right? Catches it, bam. And he's already up the field, right there. Yep. Look at that. He is not staying on his path. And what I mean by that, Erik, you know this, you've coached, you've played. A lot of times younger receivers, they'll catch it and they'll keep going that way. Look how quick he turned upfield. I mean, that's the difference. And Keon with his body, bam, he turns upfield. Now he's moving and weaving a little bit. He's a bigger body guy. He's going to be tough to bring down. And that's going to be a real key to unlocking Keon Coleman. When he catches the ball, he turns upfield, he gains those extra 3-4 yards, which helps the offense. And maybe a big play too, obviously.
And he does. He has some, like elusiveness to his game. I mean, heck, at Florida State, he was a punt returner, and because of his ability to make people miss, even at his size. So, again, I think adding some rack to his game, getting him the ball early, getting him involved early, I think it's all good. There's been reports that he's had some drops here and there, and I think that comes with the territory. But it seems like for the most part, he's been on the stock up or trending up overall in camp the first couple days.
Yeah, and one of the drops that was reported, look, this is all perspective, right? So if you're there, you can see one thing in one way, another person sees the things in another way. It might even literally depend on the angle you see something from. Like anything in life, you could be a referee like that. There was a play where he kind of got his body turned around, and by the time he got his hands up, the ball was on him, but so was Max Hairston. Yeah. And I think, that's a cool part of it, that Max was right there. Maybe Keon should have caught it. I'm not going to disagree there. But I think it was a little bit more of a bing, bang, boom type of play where, okay, those things, they happen in football games. I love what Joe Brady said about Keon Coleman the other day. Joe Brady basically said, don't judge Keon Coleman until the pads come on. That's not his game. I joked with somebody on the sidelines, and I think you'll appreciate this. I said, look, Keon Coleman's not making the U.S. flag football team. That's not his game.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, that it's not shorts and t-shirt game for Keon Coleman. It's physicality. You want to get your hands on him. That's where he's going to beat you. Right now, Max Hairston on him, a smaller corner on him, much more of a fair fight for the corner. Not as much when pads come on. Let's see when that happens.
Totally. All right. So now let's go to the offensive line. Spencer Brown had his back flare up a little bit, so he's been out of practice. But a guy whose name that's come up a lot and someone that Bills fans are familiar with is that swing guy in Tylan Grable. And when I heard the staff talk about him this week in the press conference and how he is taking, a lot of snaps for Spencer Brown with the first team, and we know his versatility. Brady talked about having, ability to play 4 different positions. He's a big athletic guy. He had a 9.85 RAS score as a tackle, which is 22nd all time since 1987. 9.97 RAS as a guard, 5th all time. So he's an athletic guy on paper. You see him in person. He's a big athletic guy. For a guy like that to not only be able to step in at right tackle, but multiple positions, I mean, it just really shows how smart and cerebral this guy is. Am I wrong there? And what have you seen from him at camp so far? Has he held his own?
Yeah, and listen, we'll have much more on this after the pads come on, because O-line and D-line are, obviously those 2 positions where it matters a little bit more. But what I love is the fact this guy in his second year, I mean, when they drafted Tylan Grable last year, I mean, I didn't give him much of a shot to kind of make the team like, okay, he'll be on the practice squad. He winds up winning the swing tackle job over Ryan Vandermark, right? I mean, I think that showed you right away what they feel. And you talk a lot about this, and you have over the last few years, but let's kind of think about the types of players they brought in on the offensive line. He is the prototypical, what they want, what Aaron Cromer likes to coach, the athletic big guy. This is Spencer Brown. This is Chase Lunt. This is Ryan Vandermark. These are big guys. Yeah. They're just really athletic, right? Deon's really athletic for his size, right? We know that. I mean, Osiris Torrance at guard. By the way, just on a side note, Osiris Torrance's body looks a little bit different, in a good way too, by the way. Like it's been like, you haven't really heard much about him, but like you said, the pads haven't come on, but I can see once the pads do come on, you're going to hear it. The defense is going to feel it, and you're going to see guys flying. Yeah, for sure. Good comment in the chat box by Charles. He says Grable has such quick feet, and that's it. Yeah. I think, if you're going to come into this league and as a late round pick, and you're going to be put on the right side, for you to go to the left side, you better have good feet, and you better be, they have to trust you to be able to do that. As you know, Erik, and offensive line coaches talk about this all the time. I've heard offensive linemen talk a lot about how some guys can't transition from right to left. They can't transition from left to right. Their anchor foot, the way they step, the way they move. The muscle. But if you're able to do this with Tylan Grable, you become so much more valuable. So I think you go into this year, and it looks to me like Tylan Grable is back on track to win that swing tackle job. What does that do for Ryan Vandermark? Is he still a guy that makes the team, but he's a healthy scratch? He's been a nice player when he's had to fill in. What does that do for Chase Lunt? Are they just going to release a guy at the end and risk losing him to waivers? They like Chase Lunt. Chase Lunt is another one of these big athletic guys. His athletic scores are off the chart.
Yeah, it's for a guy like you said to come in early in his career, have the versatility, have the football IQ, earn the trust of Aaron Kromer and this staff. I compare what he can do. It's more outside tackle. Yes, he can bump inside a guard, but he reminds me of Ryan Bates, where Ryan Bates could play all 5 positions, but more so from the shoulders up, how important and how difficult that is, especially when you're talking practice time, where you're, who you're practicing and what position. And we know the Bills love 6 offensive lineman sets. So they usually have Anderson come in, but where's Anderson after this year? Where's Connor McGovern at center after this year? More importantly, where's David Edwards after this year? And so they've obviously developed Grable, and who knows where he's going to eventually settle in if he becomes a guy that can play in this league with the ones. But at least they have someone in the pipeline that can not only back up the tackles, but if they wanted to keep bump inside. I mean, that's David Edwards. When he was at Wisconsin, he was a tackle.
I mean, Erik, you think about like their entire offensive line, how important it is to have that versatility, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, Osiris Torrance is really only a guard, but outside of that, Alec Anderson can play every spot. Yep. He's mostly an interior guy. They really like him at center if they need to. Cedric Van Pran-Granger, as in practice, actually can play a little bit of guard if they want. They've talked about training him. He's mostly a center. That's fine. But think about, as you said, you brought up but Connor McGovern, he could play all 5 positions. He played fullback and tight end for the Dallas Cowboys, for crying out loud, right? They put him in there. That's awesome. They love versatility. I think Alec Anderson might be a real big key to this. Like, now that they have Jackson Hawes, he could become your 6th offensive lineman, which we talked about a lot. Now you can have the ability to throw to him. Now that allows a guy like Alec Anderson to kind of be freed up and be, okay, do we want him as a backup guard or center or tackle this week based on someone's injury? And he can concentrate a little bit more on being that guy. And then maybe next year, Alec Anderson fights for a starting spot.
Yeah, and that's important, having a tight end that can, pitch in as a pass blocker too, not just a run blocker, but as a pass blocker. The Bills were a top team when it came to sending 5 guys out into a route. So you only have 5 guys blocking up front, the offensive line. So if they now have Hawes, who they could stick in there, he can go out for a pass, but more importantly, he can stay in the block. Now you can get your running backs out and add the extra blocking up front. So when they want to take those shots down the field to Palmer or Moore or Shakir, it allows the offensive line to secure up front for Josh Allen. So one guy that is really pushing to expand his role, which, believe it or not, is crazy to think in the Bills offense, because he's one of the Bills' most explosive, if not the most explosive offensive player. It's James Cook. And so it seems like he had a good, I think it was day 2 where he took a swing pass. I imagine with Gilliam out front, it was more of like their escort swing where they're trying to push it down the field. There's nothing there. So they swing it out to Cook. Gilliam's out front as a lead. I call that like an escort swing. He's a guy that seemed to stand out in day 2. But he's a guy that is also trying to push for more 3rd down reps, because last year he didn't get many reps on 3rd down. And especially if you're talking pass pro, I think that's the area that everyone kind of points to with him. And I will admit, Sal, I think he's gotten better at IDing and picking up the different blitzes and whatnot. But it seemed like they relied on Ty Johnson more in situations where they wanted the running back to block. I mean, if you look at the pass pro reps last year, James Cook had 14 pass pro snaps in 2024. In 2023, that was 41. So they reduced it a little bit, but then you saw Ty Johnson really kind of just take that role, whether it's pass protection and even some of the big receptions and big plays down the field to running backs. Ty Johnson really was in the forefront of that.
Josh Allen called Ty Johnson the best 3rd down back in the league.
Yeah.
I think when they re-signed him in the offseason, maybe around that time. We know Ty Johnson's going to play a lot of 3rd down. I mean, that's what he does. He can pass pro. He's a veteran. He's seen it all. And he's a good receiver. I mean, he had over 100 yards receiving against the Detroit Lions.
Yeah.
He knows how to stay open. One of the things I always notice about Ty Johnson on the field, my perspective on the field, that really helps in this regard, what you don't see on TV a lot, is how these guys work as Allen's working, right? Like they're coming back to the ball. They're being available. A lot of times you don't see that on the TV broadcast until the ball gets to where it is. Remember Ty at the back of the end zone against the Denver Broncos?
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. I mean, same thing against Detroit. Like Ty is so good at understanding where he needs to be when Josh is there. Those are little things that you want from James Cook as well. It's one thing to say, we're swinging it out to James, run this route. Right. But when the play breaks down, right, you also got to be able to work your way back. You also got to be able to understand the nuances of that. All those things playing. I'm not saying James Cook can't do it, Right. I wouldn't be surprised if that's part of the package of, okay, but we know on a 3rd down, if he has to go out and leak out, is he able to kind of keep the play alive, understand where the openings are in the zone? That's one thing. Then it's pass pro. So James Cook is at the podium the other day, and he mentioned how, he wants to be on 3rd down more, improve that he can be on 3rd down more. So I say to him, what does that include? Does that include pass protection? Is that what you're trying to improve on? And he said, it's everything. It's catching the ball. It's pass protection. And then he did this, Erik. He said, that's what I want to do. And then he looked right at me and said, and that's what I'm going to do. Like, he was like,
good,
confidently defiant almost, the way he answered it, which was great. That's what his goal is. I think he understands numbers wise. The Bills they've probably told his representatives, look, I mean, we can't pay a guy that kind of money if he's not going to be playing 3 downs for us. I mean, it's just not happening. He doesn't play enough on 3rd down. And I bet you that's where that comes from. So, James did say that he's not backing down what he wants and deserves and needs, and that's fine. And whether it's in Buffalo or somewhere else, eventually he'll get that. And I think if James Cook was a free agent this year, he'd get paid pretty good. He would. I mean, look what happened last year with the running backs. I don't know if he'd get 15 million per se or necessarily, but he'd get paid good money. He wasn't a free agent. He's still under contract with the Bills for over $5 million this year. James Cook's going to get paid by somebody. I don't know if it'll be the Buffalo Bills, but he's going to get paid by somebody.
Yeah, the quote I pulled was James Cook says, I need to get more involved in the pass game instead of the run game, just being out there on 3rd downs. That's my job. That's what I'm trying to do. And whatever I can do to help the team win games and contribute, I'm willing to do it. So, yeah, whether it's his representatives or what the coaching staff told him, he knows that in order to get the contract that he wants, he needs to be in there on 3rd downs and be productive on 3rd downs. And we talked about the pass pro thing, but I think that's kind of lost in the sauce is that he had some drop issues for being a wide receiver type back coming out or running back coming out of college. He had some drops. Now he had 12 drops in 3 years, and 7 of those came in 2023.
Yeah.
But in those situations, there were touchdowns left on the field when he was having those drops. And I thought he was better last year. There's no doubt he was better last year, but he's got to be relied upon and trusted in those 3rd downs, not just as a blocker, but also as becoming QB friendly, as you said, transitioning from maybe blocking or going to a check down into a route, finding space for Josh. Like you said, Ty Johnson has done very well the last couple of years, but also just catching the ball and doing something with it. He's got the skills, but he needs to add these things to the repertoire consistently in order to get the contract that you mentioned.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think those are the things that's why you come to Turf to Tape, everybody. These are the things that like you don't really think about a lot, right? It's not as easy as, well, is he a good pass blocker or not? Even if he masters and gets better at that, that's fine. But then what happens when a play breaks down? What happens when Josh has to scramble to his right? What happens if he has to leak out? There's a lot of things that go into all these plays, but especially on 3rd down, a critical down. And then 3rd and 3, where the 6 are versus 3rd and 7, what your role is. And when things break down, how you navigate that differently, complementing somebody else's route when it comes to all this stuff. Right. And I think those are the things. And again, I'm not here to tell you James Cook can't do that. Right. What I am here to tell you is Ty Johnson's really good at it all.
Yeah. And he's got the staff's trust right now. And so that's why you saw him the last couple of years be that guy on 3rd down. So to wrap up the offensive side of the ball, what are some things overall that have caught your attention about the offense? And I mean, you could talk about the tempo, certain areas of, whether it's play action, intermediate, like what things stood out to you about Joe Brady's offense in his second year as the main OC?
Yeah, I think the attacking of the intermediate game is one thing. And then the other part is really just this concentration on making sure you don't put the ball in harm's way. That's what Josh said, right? And Josh was unbelievable on Friday early on in 7-on-7. And then there was one mistake, but there's a miscommunications. Who knows? Was it Josh with the receiver? I don't know. There was an interception by Taylor Rapp, but he was really on point. Now in day one, quite a few incompletions early on in the red zone. And what did Josh say after? He said, I know they don't look good statistically, but I'm just not trying to put the ball in harm's way. And I think that I've seen that right here from Joe Brady, which is, look, as long as we don't turn the ball over, as long as we don't give them more opportunities, we're going to be fine. Live to fight another day, right? So I see that with them. I want to see more when the pads come on, but I like the way they're running inside right now. In some of the things that I'm seeing, and it's really, Erik, this is very, very unique and rare. And I asked Joe Brady about this. I think it was Joe, but somebody asked about it and they talked about how have you? I don't think I've ever seen the exact same 5 running backs from one year to the next at a training.
Oh yeah.
I mean, they don't have one guy out, one guy in from last year. Look at last year's training camp roster. It's the exact same 5 running backs, I mean, including Darrington Evans and Frank Gore Jr. Anyway, the point I'm making is all these guys are getting time. They're all getting reps. And I like that. And they're all getting a little chance. You could see a little glimpse. And I like the way they're running inside. But again, no pads on right now. Let's see what happens when they got to go against Daquan Jones and Ed Oliver. And of course, Deion Walker and TJ Saint. You know, those new guys. So I like the way that's coming together as well.
So real quick, Dexy Gaming in the chat asked about the deep ball. You know, the deep ball looks like it's back. If Josh can keep interceptions down, which you just talked about, protecting the ball again this year, and we have the deep ball back, we'll score more points per game this season than last season. Any thoughts on the deep ball and the reports early in camp? So the rapport needed, especially with some of the new weapons at the wide receiver position, if you're talking down the field.
Isn't it amazing that Josh Allen wins the MVP and this team was not as good in the intermediate range game? And they really haven't struck on deep balls either, to be quite honest with you, right? I mean, you go back to 2023 and he missed Stephon Diggs like that much, right? A few times. Remember that?
Oh, my goodness. Oh, my God. Like 4 or 5 touchdowns, like big plays.
That's exactly
same thing he talked about with Kincaid. He said,
exactly,
you know, if there are a few better passes from him to Kincaid last year, this whole narrative about Kincaid being a bust or struggling, it wouldn't exist.
No, that's exactly right. Yeah, I think we've seen them take some deep ball shots. It's interesting. I see him. He's targeted Keon on a few of them, you know, early on in camp here. We'll see if that continues. I think that's a guy they'd like to get down the field because of his ability to separate with his physicality and his size. Max Harrison has been matched up with Keon. I wrote about it yesterday, how that's been fun to watch a little bit. And that's going to be even more fun once the pads come on. I want to see if Max can kind of, you know, make sure he's physical enough with Keon. But the deep ball, it's there at times. You know, we'll see when the pads come on a little bit more. One thing you have to remember, guys, and everybody listening and watching, there's no sacks in training camp, right? I mean, they can blow the whistle if you get close, but a lot of times they let the play go on. So there's some times where like Josh may throw a deep ball and it's caught. And I'm like, yeah, I don't know if he would have had time to stay right there to have that ability to do that. But there's certainly a concentration, as we talked about earlier, to work on not just the dump offs, the check downs, the swing passes, those are happening, but the intermediate game and then mixing in the ball down the field.
Totally. All right, let's flip the script. Let's talk about defense, specifically the defensive line. What has stood out about the defensive line so far? I know that there hasn't been any really padded practices, but what has stood out overall from the defensive line this year? Obviously, an area that Brandon Beane heavily invested at this offseason.
Yeah, a couple of different things. New players, too, both of them. Number one, the massive size of Deion Walker. I mean, he is a really, really big dude. And if he can be the athletic freak at his size that he was at Kentucky 2 years ago, when he might have been a first-round pick when he came out of the NFL draft, what a big boom that would be for the Bills defense. Would it be, Erik? I mean, they could really use a guy that size that could move like that.
Yeah, his 2023 tape, I agree. He would have been a top pick along the defensive line. He was just so disruptive, played all over the defensive line, up the field. Even though he's big, I think it was Ed Oliver who said he's got ballerina type legs. Like he is that agile. And you could see him just running the hoop at practice, warming up in individual drills out at camp. You could see he's able to run the arc or run that hoop for his size in a really, really good way. And so I am excited about his ceiling. And, you know, obviously we have to see if he can reach that potential, but his size, along with the size they added across the board. What, you know, we talked about some of the areas the Bills struggled last year, how they can improve on defense. One of it is the quick game. Opposing offenses for years now have attacked the Bills defense with the quick game because
the Chiefs did it in the AFC Championship game. I mean, it's just right away, bam, bam, bam. They went quick game. Then they had to be on their heels against Mahomes, and then that's when they ran a few extra things. You're right about that. So what do? You go size and length, right? You get length. You get your hands up in the air. That's where Landon Jackson comes in. That's where Deion Walker comes in. Joey Bosa is a way bigger dude than people think. I think you're going to be surprised if you go out there and you look and go, you know, Joey Bosa is a big dude, right? Like, I mean, he's this pass rushing athletic guy, but like Von Miller was an undersized pass rusher, right? A little bit. And Joey Bosa is not that. Bosa's a big dude. Michael Hoecht has jumped out at me. And I'm really interested to see how they manage his reps in the preseason, given the fact that he's suspended for 6 games and they're going to have to get these young guys ready to play. So there's going to be a bit of a needle to thread here, so to speak, with how they get these guys ready. but Michael Hoecht is a really good athlete. He can play all over the front seven, essentially, Erik, and especially on the, he can play on the ball. And the first time he showed up to me at camp it was a busted play. It wasn't that Hoecht made some incredible play to get around the edge. There was a busted pass protection, but how quickly he got to the spot to get to the quarterback was noticeable on that play to me.
Hoecht was a guy that I tagged as like my primary free agent for the Bills because of his versatility, of course, inside, outside, off the ball. He could play in a 2-point sense, whether he's on the ball or off the ball. But more importantly, the way they used him in LA was more like of a joker. So he could line up anywhere, but in those crucial passing situations, you could see him on film calling the stunts, calling the blitzes, setting everyone. He was kind of that guy that was in charge. And he admitted it when he came onto our show in the film room that he was responsible for making these calls. He was kind of like the Kyle Williams of, hey, this is the protection we're going to see on 3rd down. This is a stunt we should run to this side. This is what we should run to that side. He was in charge of that on 3rd downs in LA when he was healthy. And to do that at the story arc that he's had with playing, interior D-line, like being off the ball linebacker and stuff they did in LA, you got to be smart. We always talk about from the shoulders up, you got to be super smart and intelligent. So I'm excited. Yes. Once he comes back from his suspension, he could make a big impact in not just on the field. You talked about a lot of the young guys they brought in at the edge position and interior positions. His mental football makeup and what he could pass on to these young guys and how he's able to verbalize it to teach them. He is like Von, kind of that vibe that Ed Oliver talked about that Von has, where he'd throw tips out there and you don't even realize that that's gold. Like Michael Hoecht has that, and he's able to break down the game and slow down the game, not just for fans like he did in the film room, but to his teammates, especially those younger guys that they brought in.
Yeah, and I think we have to talk a little bit about, the changes on defense too, the coaching staff, because I think that plays into this, right? And you've talked a lot about Ryan Nielsen and what he brings to the table for the Buffalo, the senior defensive assistant. And I will tell you, and this guy, he might be a senior defensive assistant. And some teams that might be, he's just kind of hanging out and helping out in the back group. This guy's on the field this guy's coaching.
Hands on.
He's 100% hands on. Yeah. And I love that. And I think that he brings a different perspective. He's been around this league a lot and he's seen a lot. And you've talked a lot about, what he brings to the table as far as some of the place that he's been and what they want to do with that. And I think that that's going to be a really good piece of kind of unlocking what the Bills are trying to do here. Who else? Christian Taylor is a new defensive assistant. I'm going through the Marcus West is still on the defensive line as well. So yeah, I think this is a coaching staff that really is trying to unlock some of these guys, be a little bit more aggressive. And when you see them and the way that they go about their jobs, you can kind of get that sense.
Totally. Terrell Bernard came on to One Bills Live after one of the practices this week, and Chris Brown and Tasker asked some great questions to him. And Terrell's one of those guys that can vocalize it and verbalize it really well. And he said that McDermott told him the night before that the entire team, that this is the type of defense I want. I want a nasty, physical, aggressive defense. And so you just said, when you looked at the staff and we see the clips, or you're at practice, you see Ryan Nielsen be hands-on. You see him be vocal. You see him be physical, showing big guys like Greg Rousseau how he wants them to lock out when it's a run, how he wants them to scoop and wrap up when they tackle. He's showing them firsthand himself how he wants them to play. And I just think that his coaching style, his hands-on style, what we see as that consultant assistant, it's nasty, it's physical, and it's aggressive. And that is exciting for a Bills defense when you pair it and marry it with the Bills offense and how they can complement each other. That excites me a lot.
I'll tell you two things about Ryan Nielsen. Number one, he looks like a football coach.
He does. He does.
You know what I mean? Right. Yeah. Like this guy, like when you watch him, you're like, oh, that's a football coach. That's the coach that I had, my junior year in high school that really, really nasty and got after it, but he's a great technician. He really is. And I'm going to say this. I was talking with Matt Milano's dad, and I know Matt Milano's dad a little bit, and we were kind of off to the side watching Matt and he goes, man, Sal, he goes, I've really been watching, some of the coaches and, go about it. He goes, I really like the way he said to me, I really like the way Ryan Nielsen, it just really talks to these guys about where to place their hands, the technique. He's such a technician. And it was really interesting to kind of get that perspective from a guy who's watching his own son play linebacker.
Yeah.
And he's talking about the coach who's working with that group and mostly defensive linemen at that point and all the things that go into it. So I was really, that was cool perspective for me.
That's awesome. That's awesome to hear. So to kind of wrap up some of the D-line stuff, you talked about Deion Walker and guys like that. So what about the rotations? The Bills love to rotate their D tackles and DNs. Yeah. What about guys like TJ Sanders, Dwayne Carter, and Ogunjobi?
Yeah, again, on Ogunjobi, I wonder what the plan is going to be for him, right? I mean, he's in the rotation. He hasn't necessarily flashed or popped. I mean, again, we'll see when the pads come on with a lot more of these guys, but he's there. He's rotating. It doesn't mean he's done anything wrong or anything like that. I mean, right now it's tough for defensive linemen to make their presence known, so to speak. You can kind of only get a bit of a feel for them. I think that Deion Walker has done a really good job, and TJ Sanders, of getting their hands on guys and beating them to a spot. And again, what happens when the pads come on? Can they do it as much? These guys are rookies. They're coming in. They're trying to prove something. They're trying to fight for something, right? I really like that part of it. Joey Bosa, there's days where, and Sean McDermott said this, they're going to manage his reps a little bit more than other days, right? What's going to happen? Maybe here's a great example. So Sunday, they'll go back. They'll practice. Monday is the first day of pads. Do they give them less on Sunday to be ready for pads on Monday? Or is it vice versa? To give more on Sunday and they lay off them on the pads on Monday? There's going to be a plan for all these guys that are brought in. And then AJ Epinesa got into a little bit with Jackson Hawes after a play. He's kind of a forgotten guy, AJ Epinesa, but he goes right to the length. They love the length, right? I mean, like, he's been on this team for a while. He knows the system. And I know AJ hasn't put up these incredible numbers, but he's been consistently good in this league. And he's had some really nice plays in games. And I know everybody wants the 10, 12 sacks. That's just, but when you get 6, 7, 8 sacks in a season, you're steady as you go and a part-time rotational player, pretty much a rotational guy. I mean, that's nice. And then there's Javon Solomon. Someone asked us about Javon Solomon in the chat a while ago. Steve, thank you. Can he be a Jerry Hughes type of player? That's who I always compare him to. I don't know about the production. He's the same size. He's the same size as Jerry Hughes. He's undersized. I don't know. At the end of the day, Erik, I don't know if there's enough spots for everybody, right? Yeah. They have what's going to help in a regard, and I hate saying it that way, is the suspensions. You don't have to keep Ogunjobi and Hoecht on the roster. They go to a separate bucket. They're going to be suspended. Then you get to keep 5 defensive ends, 5 defensive tackles, which we can all kind of see the names. But what if they're all healthy? They're not keeping 12 on the roster total.
Yeah, it's going to be a tough battle. It's definitely gonna be a tough battle, and at least they don't have to rush to make that decision right away, but it'll be interesting to see how that unfolds, especially Epinesa, for a guy that came in a certain way, was asked to change his whole body type composition, and then not only change his body composition, but change from being just a rotational pass rusher from one year to last year being an early down base defensive end. That is really where, you got to give him a tip of the cap, is that his ability to kind of roll with the punches and still, as you said, be consistent in whatever role was asked of him. So
and can I make this point too? I have people great John in the chat says, I haven't heard much about Landon Jackson either. Well, let's remember too, I just said, first of all, there's no pads on, right? Second of all, they do rotate a lot. So it's not like these guys are going to be making plays all over the field because they're on the field every play. And the other thing is they're going against a really good offensive line.
Yeah, exactly. That's true too. Yeah.
I mean,
iron sharpens iron. The Bills offensive
it's always the yin and yang of training camp, right? It's so funny. You've gone to camp and everybody loves touchdowns. They love wild plays. They love offense. They love Josh Allen. So when there's a big touchdown, and I'm like, well, it is against your defense. And then like when somebody on defense makes a play, you're like, oh, just missed. I'm like, no, you should be happy. The defense made a play. It's always that give and take.
Yeah. No, it's gonna be fun. And we'll see what the rotations are like, but we'll also see like maybe a move could be made if they do feel like, hey, Solomon can step up or whatever guys can step up. Maybe they can make some moves, and Bean is a wizard when it comes to that stuff. And speaking of being a wizard, one guy that he drafted late in the draft a couple of years ago that is really a hit on has been Christian Benford. And he is our tapped in, brought to you by Thin Man Brewery, our tapped in player for camp the first few days, a guy that we've seen, for us that aren't out at camp, have seen a lot of talk about him as being a lockdown corner. And I want to get your thoughts on Christian Benford's first few days out at camp. He just seems like he's been everywhere.
Yeah. And remember what I said about Khalil Shakir a little while ago? Knows his role, steady as you go, doesn't make the mistake. He's just right there. That's Christian Benford. It seems like every time I look up, Benford's near the ball. He's making a play on the ball. He's just there. He's a guy that you just trust. We all know that Sean McDermott in this defense, you have to trust guys. That's the biggest, and anything. I always say that's the biggest word for Sean McDermott if you're going to play. It's trust.
Yep.
They trust this guy so much. I mean, the organization gave him a nice contract extension at the end of the season. Christian Benford, you think about this guy's journey. 6th round pick from Villanova, right? To be where he is right now.
Crazy.
And he's not getting the hype and the accolades around the league because Christian Benford means something different to the Bills than he would to a lot of other teams in this league. If you go put Christian Benford on a team that's going to be a super heavy man-to-man team and look for interceptions all over the place, that's not his game. He's going to be around the ball. He's going to be making plays, but this guy is super cerebral. He understands zone concepts. He ran it in Villanova. That's a big reason the Bills brought him in here. Think about the dichotomy between Kyrie Elam and Christian Benford. This is part of the reason Kyrie never hit with the Bills, right? We've talked about this. Maybe the system fit wasn't where they wanted. Christian, he kind of understood already coming into this league how to play in this type of defense. And then he's just taken it up a notch. And what I love about Christian Benford is a little bit even more off the field. He's a tireless worker, Erik. Like he's always staying extra. He's always out there doing a little bit more, working on the jugs machine, working his footwork after practice. He's with other DBs. He's with wide receivers. He's always talking with wide receivers about hand placement. They're helping each other. I really love that about Christian Benford. And I just think he's such a steady player. He has missed some time over the years. We know he suffered the concussion at the end of the season last year in the AFC Championship game. He's had a couple other injuries, but I think the Bills feel that, this is a guy that the way he treats his body, those are things that happen in football, but they can trust him. He's going to be available, and he's just been super duper steady.
Yeah, I mean, 6 pass breakups, 2 interceptions last year. He's reliable. You said trust. He's a reliable tackler. Only 3 missed tackles over the last 2 seasons. Number 1 in havoc rating by Field Vision, which Coach Alexander, he's a guy that I lean on when it comes to defensive play, DB play, and he's involved with Field Vision. And he was the number 1 cornerback in havoc rating by Field Vision, which is an algorithm that tracks the player impact. And so he's always around the ball, like you said. He's always in phase, and he's a technician. You see him before and after practice out at camp. You can attest to this. He's always working on his craft. He's always working on his hands, his feet. It's very particular. It's very purposeful. His movement is very purposeful prior to practice and also after practice.
Yeah, and Trey's the same way. Trey's always been that way.
Yes.
Trey, that from the minute he walked in, he's always been a guy like that. And I love the relationship and the bond. A lot was talked about Christian and Rasul, right? And they had this really big bond, and it was great. And you see it now happening with Max Hairston as well, especially with Trey. I made a note the other day, little things you pick up on. Every time Tre'Davious White, almost every time, I shouldn't say it that way. Almost every time Tre'Davious White gets subbed out for Max Hairston coming in, they make sure they make eye contact. They pass each other. They give each other a high five, a low five, a fist bump. They say a word or two to each other. Little things like that matter. Like Max Hairston knows Tre'Davious White's not here to hurt me. He's here to help me. And how much confidence that can give a young guy, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And so now you're seeing, Christian Benford at practices also kind of passing that on to the other younger guys, Dorian Strong and guys like that. And so I'm excited what Christian Benford has done the first few days, but also what it could do for the Bills defense. They really haven't had a lockdown type corner since Trey. And when Trey was in his heyday, and who knows if they want in certain higher leverage situations, they very well could lock and shadow Christian Benford to the opposing wide receiver that they want to shut down. And so I think with a little more man coverage, as we talked about in the first episode, and the skill set that Christian Benford and trust that he's gained from the staff, they really could rely on him to certain weeks, shadow X player to cut that offense in half and again, make them left-handed and have to run their offense through another player.
Yeah, one philosophy I've seen teams employ over the years too is they might like double the team's number 1 and then put your top corner on team's number 2, right? Something like right. Like you'll do something like that, and that's where Benford allows you to do that. If you want to have a guy, you say, you know what, we want to have him lock someone down, but maybe it's not a great matchup against a Justin Jefferson or a Jamar Chase. Well, let's double that guy. Let's put Christian on the other guy, right? I mean, that's where you can start to play with that when you have a guy with that type of skill level.
Totally. So Christian Benford, for the first few days of camp, has been our tapped in player of the week, brought to you by Thin Man Brewery. And if you guys, I know most of you guys are familiar with Thin Man Brewery. Well, typically you hear about Pils Mafia. Well, they're bringing a backup. They're bringing Mafia Light. This is a new beer, a new product that is being pushed out by Thin Man Brewery. It's going to be your new tailgate essential. Mafia Light hits different with just 3.5% ABV and only 80 calories per 12-ounce can. It drinks like water with notes of beer. And as someone who's aging like myself, light beers like this, especially during the summer, are my go-to, especially you're out at the beach or whatever, and it's 90 degrees like we've had this summer. So this is definitely a beer that you can not only drink before the games and tailgate with, but also to enjoy the final days of summer. It's the first craft Pilsner of its kind, brewed and packaged right here in Western New York, a true game changer for local beer lovers. Keep your eyes peeled. Mafia Light invades Buffalo and Rochester markets in early August, just in time for tailgate season. And again, it comes to a point with Christian Benford being the tapped-in guy, courtesy of Thin Man Brewery. We're excited about not just the product that Thin Man Brewery is pushing about, but also obviously Christian Benford and what he can do for the Bills scheme and the Bills defense this year. Awesome episode number 2, Sal. Appreciate you joining me this week. Anything that you got going on this week that you want to let everyone know about? Any podcasts?
Yeah, we're going
when does
back
camp
out.
start? What's camp schedule look like? And then your podcast schedule.
One of the big questions everybody's asking me, when do the pads come on? They come on Monday.
Oh,
so that's a big deal. So
exciting.
Sunday, today we're doing this on Saturday morning, Erik and I, and going back out to camp either late tonight or probably tomorrow morning and practice, 9:45 for the team. And then right after that, Erik, you ever been a card collector? You ever been a sports card collector?
Back in the day, absolutely. And actually, I still have some. My mom brought them to me like a few years ago. They're sitting under the stairs here in the basement.
Me too. I was the same way, and I had a ton of them. And then as I got older, I kind of lost touch. My son is a huge card collector. He really knows his stuff. He gets them PSA graded. He goes to card shows. He loves it. Cool. And I say it because Matt Bove and I are going to be at We the Hobby in Rochester Sunday after practice. They have a big, what they call post-practice tailgate party. They have card breakers coming in. We're going to be doing a show. So a little bit different than our normal thing. We'll be breaking cards on the air, talking about sports cards and talking about Bills training camp. And then Monday night, we're going to unwind over at Marge's Lakeside Inn. Come on by. If you're around Monday night, come on. And that's going to be a Sal's House podcast. We're going to do that. Just going to have some friends. Cool. It's a chilling out Marge's Lakeside Inn. That's going to be Monday night at 8:00.
Marge's is one of my favorite places.
It's great.
And I'll be out to camp for the Thursday practice and then the scrimmage. And so Wednesday night, the first night I get into Rochester, we're going to Marge's that night because they're having a big party for a local legend in the music scene. So we'll be going there as well. Of course, hitting up the local spots prior to that.
Great.
But I'm excited to get out there, get excited to watch camp and catch up with you out there. But we appreciate everyone joining us live here this early morning on Saturday. But if you're catching it later, if you're catching on the audio platforms, we're everywhere, whether it's iHeartRadio, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon, you can catch this podcast on all podcast platforms, obviously on YouTube as well. And we appreciate everyone joining us live, throwing us some questions, keeping us on track, in the chat room with topics and questions. We appreciate all the engagement and interaction. So on behalf of Turf to Tape, I'm Erik Turner. That's Sal Capaccio, and we'll catch you on the next stream. We'll let you know exactly what dates it's gonna be fluid. This is not gonna be like, hey, every week it's gonna be the same day, but we're gonna try to record each and every week to bring you the access and insight that you can expect.
We're gonna be like the Bills teasing their new uniforms. You just have to kind of watch out for it, right?
Yeah,
when it happens, it happens.
Keep your ears and eyes peeled. We appreciate everyone joining us. Again, I'm Erik. That's Sal. We'll see you next time.